Glad to be here. How many people heard me on a Jan show? I'm Brian Peskin. Thanks. How many people heard this for the first time? How many people are to something like this in-person thing for the first time? Okay. I'll give you the science in a few minutes, but I just want to go over some very current things that you probably haven't seen. Many of you taking it's called a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, NSAID, like Aleve, aspirin's one of them, Advil. Anybody taking that every day? Very problematic if you're taking them even every other day long term. FDA strengthens warnings of heart attack and stroke risk for non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. They didn't put aspirin in there, even though it should be. Advil, Anvil, not Anvil, Aleve. It's two A's. Should take them for the lowest effective dose for the shortest possible amount of time. The quote was, "There is no period of use shown to be without risk." MD, Master of Public Health, Deputy Director of the FDA's Anesthesia, Analgesia, and Addiction Products. There's no period of use shown to be without risk. This is a thing like Vioxx, Celebrex, all these things. And the reason for this is what they do is they stop all what's called prostaglandin production. Prostaglandins are called long-chain metabolites from the parent essential oils, and I'll be talking about that. So you have these parents, LA, ALA, terms don't matter. What matters is your body can't make either one. You have to get them from food. They come from nuts, they come in steak, they come in almost everything because we're made of it. So the parent omega-6, it's called linoleic acid, not big on terms, and the parent omega-3, alpha-linolenic acid. All it means is one has 3 double bonds, one has 2. Your body needs them both, but you need much more of the omega-6 side. So anybody that's telling you we get all this omega-6 and you're overdosed on it, absolutely wrong. When you figure out based on tissue how much you need, it's 11 to 1. Parent omega-6 to parent omega-3, you need 11 times more of the omega-6 side than the omega-3 side. So anybody saying you're getting too much doesn't know any physiology at all and should learn to shut their mouth. You are getting too much adulterated omega-6. That is the problem. Where does the adulteration come from? Because food processors need long shelf life, and the oil people at McDonald's and Burger King, every fast food restaurant, any restaurant, wants to have that oil last for 30 days. They have to make it where the oxygen doesn't transfer. So that's something like trans fat, an interesterified fat, preserved fat, doesn't matter what it is, they're stopping the oxygen transfer, and you go, that's great. Well, it's great for them, but it's very, very bad for you because you need oxygen. Every cardiologist knows you stop oxygen, you have what's called a myocardial infarction. That's lack of oxygen. You have a stroke in the brain, lack of oxygen. Otto Warburg, we'll talk about him in a little bit, prime cause of cancer, lack of oxygen to the cell. So everything is oxygen. The way your body heals is flood it with oxygen, kills everything. That's the key, and the food processors are stopping it. What I want to talk about is you're going to be able to cut way back on things like Aleve and Advil and aspirin. Should not be taking. If you want to take it once a week, once every 2 weeks, that's not bad. You have a headache, it will knock it out, but it's stopping the repair of the tissue. So it's a two-edged sword. You go, I don't feel any pain, I'm getting better. No, you're getting worse, actually. There's no healing going on. That's how this stuff works. When you have pain, it's a signal for your body to repair itself. Pain is good. It's saying something is wrong. Don't use the darn thing. If my hand hurts, I take something to get rid of the pain, I'll use the hand. You shouldn't be using it. Your body wants to repair it, not overwork it. Another one just came out. The FDA cuts trans fats in processed food. This was June 17th of this year. It was only known 70 years ago that trans fats, and this starts with the omega-6. They never use omega-3 for frying. It's too reactive. It goes bad way too quickly. So you'll never fry in flax oil. Anybody here ever see flax oil for frying? No way. You don't touch it. Every oil, canola oil, sunflower, safflower, it's the omega-6, or it could be either a saturated fat or a monounsaturated. Monounsaturated is olive oil. You can saute in it. Doesn't have a real high smoke point, so you can't deep fry in it. You wreck that too, but you can heat it up. You can't do it with anything with omega-3, can't do it with anything with DHA, EPA like fish oil. So they're saying to cut the trans fats. Known 70 years ago, and I still think they're giving the food people another 3 years, even they know it's bad. Now the problem is, they can tell you what to do, the government. Only took them 70 years to come up with this, probably after New York went nuts. But when this first came out, banning the trans fats in New York, I said to a colleague, this isn't as good as you think. Because what do you think they're going to replace it with? They're not going to use saturated fats, which is what you want. So if anybody deep fries a lot, like French fries or something, you want a fully saturated fat. A fully saturated fat can't screw anything up. So McDonald's, all the fast food restaurants used to use that. Lard, palm oil, coconut oil. The Canadians got rid of all the coconut oil in the movie theaters where they were popping the popcorn. Very, very safe fat. They come in with canola oil, which is rapeseed oil, which is where mustard gas comes from. It's an awful, awful oil to use. So everything that's good has gotten thrown out, been replaced with something that sounds good, and it's killing us. And the proof that it's killing us is every year we get sicker and sicker. Now you live longer because they can keep you alive being half dead, but you're sicker. And it really, really disgusts me because, like I said, the government can tell you what not to do many years down the road after they allow big problems, but they can't tell you what to do. It's like I said on Jan's show. 2 and 2 is not 87. Well, what is 2 and 2? I don't know, but it's not 87. Okay, great. They don't tell you what to do, or in the case of interesterified fats, which is what everybody's using to stop the trans fats, it's actually worse than the trans fats. It elevates everybody's blood sugar. So it makes diabetes worse, and in case you didn't know, diabetes is the #1 epidemic in America and the world. And that was caused by our fine government too, putting everybody on a high-carb diet. So you do not want many trans fats, but sometimes you're stuck with them. You have to eat out, you have to eat in restaurants. So it's all in a ratio of how much of the good stuff to the bad stuff I get. That means if I eat 20% junk and 80% good in the oils, that's what my cell structure is going to be like. So that means 20% of every cell is going to have screwed up junk in it? Yeah, but your body is real good. Warburg showed you have to decrease the oxygen level in a cell by 1/3, 35%. That is a hell of a lot. 1/3, and you can still not get cancer, and it has to go on for years. The average cancer is a decade to form. That's why I said on Jan's show, I hope we start getting people here in their 30s, because this stuff is starting your late 20s and 30s. I mean, it's starting when you're born, but you're seeing the problems get younger and younger and younger. It's very, very common to have people in their 30s with cancer and heart disease. And diabetes, everybody's getting it. Type 2 is very easy to fix, but it's all tied to the oils. What's the big deal with the oils? Why do I keep harping on that? You have a cell membrane. You have 100 trillion cells, okay? 100 trillion, that's a lot. Half of every cell membrane is protein. The other half is fat. There's virtually no structural carbohydrate. So anybody's telling you a high-carb diet needs to really look at some physiology because there's no carbohydrate in the cell membrane. Half of that fat to a quarter, maybe 25 to 1/3, 25% to 33% are these oils. They're parent omega-6 and parent omega-3. And again, that ratio is 11 to 1 on average. In most organs and tissues, it's about 4 to 1. In the muscles, it's 6.5 to 1. In fat storage, it's more like 20 to 1. So your body wants a big store of the omega-6. DHA, EPA, okay, anybody taking fish oil? It's probably a lot of you. It's become the #1 supplement after vitamins and minerals. I was around when fish oil didn't sell at all. I would go to the wholesalers. Are you selling any of this stuff? No, no, no. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of money because fish oil started from worthless fish that they couldn't sell to the fine restaurant. What do we do with this junk? The restaurant's not going to buy it. And what they always do is they go to the supplement industry. We can sell it to these guys. They're desperate. Everybody's looking for a solution, and we keep getting suckered. But here's one article that came out, New York Times, March 31st. This year. So very, very current. Fading claims on fish oil. At least 10% of Americans are using fish oil regularly. Between 2006 and 2012, at least 24 rigorous studies of fish oil were published. That's 24. 22 out of the 24 were absolute failures. 22 out of 24 failures. And yet during this time, sale of fish oil doubled. Quote, there's a major disconnect, Dr. Gray said. The sales are going up despite progressive accumulation of trials that show no effect. It's not no effect, it's a very negative effect I'll talk about in a little bit. Dr. George Fodor, a cardiologist, University of Ottawa, outlined the flaws in much of this earlier research, but the halo effect persists. I think the era of fish oil as a medication could be considered over. Study's lead author, Dr. Tagan of the Institute for Pharmacological Research in Milan. You hear any of that, people taking fish oil? Any of you hear how worthless it is? No. July 9th, this one just came out. It's July this month, isn't it? Yeah, we're in July. This just came out. Doctor sent it to me. Washington Post, fish oil pills, a $1.2 billion industry built so far on empty promises. That's their words, not mine. National Institutes of Health, omega-3 supplements have not been shown to protect against heart disease. This was the big one. I take this junk from a fish, it's going to stop my risk of heart disease. It's going to stop the AFib, going to stop the ventricular fib, going to stop the heart disease overall. Delusional. I do basically what you would call theoretical physiology, meaning I look at the science and be able to predict what should happen. When I looked at fish oil, I said it's absolutely impossible for it to stop anything due to the heart. And then after reading all this stuff with these guys, the only reason they even said fish oil works because they're competitive. So if I have omega-3 and omega-6, they compete for each other. Well, the omega-3 makes it where the omega-6 can't do anything. Well, by not having it do anything, you're killing yourself because you want the omega-6 to do a lot. And I'll tell you in a little bit what it does. $1.2 billion annually, majority of published research, no evidence of a health benefit. American Medical Association, quote, fish oil supplements lack efficacy across a range of health outcomes. They don't do anything. Well, we have found that the original papers continue to be cited long after they've been refuted. So all this early garbage on fish oil has been reversed, but you never hear about it. Long-lived admonition that Americans are using too much salt. That's wrong too. Salt is the #1 extracellular nutrient. I can overdose you with 10 times the amount of salt that's normal. Within 3 days, your body spits out what's called antidiuretic hormone. You're normal. They did something called the Inner Salt Study way back in 1990, and I spoke with the director of it at Cornell, who was also on the cover of Time magazine as Time's Man of the Year in cardiology one year. Dr. Leroux, and he said, Brian, 1 in 5,000 people with hypertension is salt the cause. I said, can I publish that? He goes, no, I don't want anybody publishing anything, but because they always misstate what I say. And I said, how's this? I'll put it in a fax to you, I'll sign it, and I guarantee that will be exactly what was that I published. Because I always go to the person that gives the quote. If I'm publishing anything that's really state of the art, I don't do publications and believe them. I want to go right to the horse's mouth. And he talked to me, and I got him. He was vacationing in Florida, but his secretary gave me the number, and I actually called him. This is going way, way back. It's called the Inner Salt Study. 20 years ago, 10,000 people. And we're still told salt is the problem. It's no problem at all. It's killing you by restricting salt, especially as you get older. Where do you think the hydrochloric acid comes from in your stomach? By restricting the salt, you don't get any of the chloride. NaCl, sodium chloride. You've stopped the input of the chloride, so your body can't make hydrochloric acid. So what you've done is all your elderly relatives, you've made them where they can't eat anything. This is why the elderly have so many, quote, digestive problems, because we did it to them. You shouldn't have any issue with digestion being older. But we keep getting wrong advice. Recommendations stand in the fish oil, even as studies suggesting their worthlessness. This is their wording, by the way, mounted. Former American Heart Association President Robert Eckel, recommendations for fish oil needs to be revised. Almost all studies of fish oil supplements show no benefit. Then they go on to say what, where all this garbage came from. They looked at the Eskimos, right? You've all heard this one. They're living on fish. Well, they can't be living on fish. The ice is frozen most of the year. How stupid can you be? They're not living on fish. They're living on whale, mammal, caribou, mammal, seal, mammal. There's no fish. And if you look at the difference where the triglycerides are on this stuff, EPA, DHA, it's on a different chain. There's 3 chains on a triglyceride, tri. It's called S1, S2, S3. It's a different chain. And where it is matters. It just doesn't all get busted down and shoved in wherever you want. It absolutely matters what it comes in from. It's not the fish. It wasn't until the early 2000s that the market began to soar, in part because of the enthusiasm from the advice of the American Heart Association. So the American Heart Association told everybody this fish oil stuff is good. And they were wrong. Has anybody ever apologized in the nutritional field or the medical field saying we're wrong, we're sorry? No. No. My comment is, where's the guy that said this and what's his punishment? There's nothing. New research shows. Well, who did the old research and where'd they come up with this? I mean, it really, really gets tiring. They did another big one. This time the fish oil patients were more likely to die. The excess risk of the cardiac death was largely found in the subgroup given the fish oil supplements. Again, 22 out of 24 studies failed. Quote, it's amazing how popular fish oil supplements have become without conclusive evidence of their efficacy. So this is the way it is in America. Like I told you, if I have enough time and enough money, I can convince you to cut your own head off so you don't get brain cancer. It's this bad. Okay, good idea. Yeah, you're going to die, but you won't get brain cancer. Fish oil is so bad because nobody asked how much of this stuff does your body use. You're getting fish oil supplements in a dose. I don't know how many milligrams. Could be 500 milligram capsule, 1,000 milligram capsule, 3 or 4 a day. If it's 60% DHA, EPA, you're getting 300 to 1,000 milligrams. Well, I always ask, how much is my body using in a day? The answer is 14. This was conclusively shown in 2010 with positron emission testing. They looked how much goes into the brain, and that's the biggest depository of DHA and EPA. And everybody goes, well, the brain's loaded with it. It is. It's 14% DHA and EPA. But how much of that turns over on a daily basis? Next to nothing. The half-life, that's how you measure this stuff, is 2.5 years, which means half of the amount in the brain gets changed every 2.5 years. So on average, it lasts 2.5 years, which means your antioxidants better damn well work good to last 2.5 years with the same thing. So I'll say, okay, 14 milligrams. That takes care of my brain. That'll take care of the retina in my eye. That'll take care of everything. Take a look at how much you're getting. A pharmacologic overdose of 20 to 500 times too much. Now, fish oil goes rancid spontaneously in the air. Where do fish come from? They're living in 30 to 50, 60 degree water. Very, very cold. What are we living in? 70. What's our body temperature? 100, 98.6, right? So we're using very little DHA, EPA, 15 milligrams. We're getting overdosed by, on average, 100 times based on the genius's recommendations. And the temperature is wicked hot, which means it spontaneously turns rancid. you're having rancidity the minute it hits your body. Doesn't matter if it's okay in the capsule, you can stop it. You can put antioxidants in there. But even with that, I checked, there's something called penicillin, which is a measure of how rancid something really is. Fish oil is 19, which is awful, because if you look at a parent essential oil blend, it's about 4. So 19 means it's basically bad, but because all fish oil has 19, because it goes bad at room temperature, they say it's okay. So we're getting conned once again. Next thing you do is you look at fish. The intelligent question, is there a difference in the amount of the fish's DHA, EPA, because that's the active ingredients, right, of fish oil, those two things, from a fish living in very cold water, like 30 degree, or 35 degree. It's not going to freeze at 32. It has to be lower than that because it's moving. So probably going to be about 25 before it freezes. So at a fish living around 30 compared to a fish at 70, because there's warm water fish. The answer is yeah. 14 times less. Not 14%, not 1,400. 14 times less. That is enormous. And what are we doing? We're taking even more at a higher temperature. And when you look at this, I wrote a paper on it. I've written a couple papers. Actually, the journals retracted them because so many people complained that we're selling fish oil, they just didn't want the heat. I had first-rate researchers. One was in the Journal of Lipids about how fish oil should never be counted on to help anything and how it was very problematic. The lead adjudicator on it was a professor of biochemistry specializing in membrane lipid oxidation, which means the membrane going bad, the oils in it going bad, and was the editor or writer of no less than 4 books on the topic. And it was a bitch to get it passed. In the beginning, it was, this article's too long, and it's not covering certain things. So I covered everything, and the article turned out to be 2 pages longer. He took it. Said, this has to be published because so many people are taking fish oil, and it's dangerous. That was his conclusion after reading everything I did, and here's a specialist. Then they jerked it because so many people complained. So even the journals are politicized, and when you see the excuses they did for pulling it back was pathetic. There was no reason based on science. Oh, I didn't mention I had patents. That was the reason. I'm prejudiced, even though this was a review article, meaning in a review article you take other people's work. About 96% of it was other people's work. I referenced myself very, very little. 96 out of 100 times referenced everybody else but me. That's a review article. So how can my prejudice be tied to 96 people out of 100 that I didn't even know or had nothing to do with that wrote their own articles? This is how bad it is today. How bad it is today. So again, there's 2 oils that your body can't make. Parent omega-6, parent omega-3. What's so special about parent omega-6? It's the brick and mortar, it's the structure of the tissue. Number one thing is your skin. It's called epithelial. So all the cancers, 90% of them, are epithelial based. That's called a carcinoma. Sarcoma is connective tissue. But epithelial is everything in cancer. Everything we have is lined with skin. Even the inside of the artery. It's 1 cell thick. It's called the intima. Your lymph system, same thing. 1 cell thick. That's all you got there. You know how easy it is to screw up 1 cell? Real easy. So you don't have much of a tolerance there. This is all has to rely on fully functional parent omega-6. That's what it's made of, directly. Doesn't undergo anything. It goes right into the cell, ready-made. So if you're not getting this, and most people aren't getting enough, the problem is it goes into the cell in proportion to what you're eating. This is known. You can track it. You can do radioisotope testing, so I can give you 20% junk food, tag it, and I know right where it went into the tissue. And I can do the same thing with the good oils, and you could tell a trans fat versus unadulterated. So you need to put it back in, and the best way is with a supplement. That way you can still eat some of the junk. So the average tissue is 4 times more parent omega-6. The muscles are 6, and then your stored body fat is about 20, so you have a big store of it. The other thing the omega-6 side does is what's called long-chain metabolites. That's like DHA, EPA, but that's on the omega-3 side. The first one is GLA. GLA, you may have heard of, it's in evening primrose. Hemp has it. I'm not big on hemp because it's never been shown to be used in cooking or eating in any culture anywhere I could find or anybody else could find. Borage oil has it. Blackcurrant has it. Evening primrose is the best. It's because of the structure of the plant. There's technical reasons for it, but evening primrose is superb. It allows direct production of your body's #1 anti-inflammatory. Remember you're taking Advil and Aleve to get rid of the pain? Well, if your body gets the anti-inflammatory it can make on its own, you're going to be helped without taking that. And that's an anti-inflammatory that's natural and will not harm you. So we're impaired today. If you're diabetic, the way the conversion from the parent to the GLA to the PGE1 is impaired. So I recommend a supplement that has some of the GLA ready-made in it, so if there's any kind of impairment, it's bypassed. The next one is something called prostacyclin. That's also on the omega-6 side. That makes it where the blood platelets can't stick together or stick to an artery. And omega-6 is also an oxygenator. Remember the myocardial infarction? That's from stopping oxygen. That's a stroke. That's a heart attack. Well, the omega-6 allows oxygenation at the cellular level. And Dr. Campbell had this in 1976. He was a pediatric. He was looking at cystic fibrosis because they have problems with oxygen transfer in the cell. Nobody has it in the bloodstream unless you have a blood disorder or you have a problem in your lung. Most people have perfect oxygen level in their blood. That doesn't mean anything. It just means you don't have a readily noticeable disease. Question is cellular. And if you're not getting these oils, you're deficient. And once you hit that 35% deficiency problem, and it's not too hard to get to with the junk we're eating and stuff that's allowed to go into the foods, and it's all the oils. Everybody goes, oh, there's so many things that are screwed up. The oils are the #1 thing. The parent omega-6 oils are the #1 thing. Everything has a relativeness. That's at the top. Everything else is way the heck down there. Adulteration of the oils is king of the mountain. You fix that, you've got 99% of anything. I don't care what else you're doing. Now, you can be eating too many carbs, that'll make you fat and diabetic. But as far as cellular integrity, it's the oils because they make up the cell. Remember, the carbs don't. They cause other problems, and blood sugar, we'll talk about that later. So you've got to get the unadulterated omega-6. Prostacyclin and PGE1, I don't know how you get a heart attack. I look at metabolic pathways, and you've just solved them. The platelets can't stick, so I can't get an artery that's clogged. The platelet can't stick to the artery wall, so there's no buildup. And I have full oxygenation. Well, those are the only 3 causes of a heart attack. There's nothing else. You can bleed to death. If I cut off your arm, you're going to bleed to death, but I'm not talking that. That doesn't happen normally. It stopped. Prime cause of cancer, Otto Warburg. Has anybody read The Hidden Story of Cancer here? There's other people that say the same thing. Thomas Seyfried has written another book, mainly for doctors. It's highly technical. It's called Cancer is a Metabolic Disease. I talked to him, and he says the same thing. He goes, we're going to make no progress in cancer if people don't know Otto Warburg's work about lack of cellular oxygenation causing cancer. It's automatic. If there's oxygen starvation at the cell level, the cell becomes cancerous. You don't feel it, you don't see it, you don't anything. And it doesn't have to be continuous. It can be oxygenated, then impaired. Oxygenated and impaired. And it was proven in 1953 and 1955 by American physicians and scientists that this happened. They starved heart cell tissue with the oxygen over a couple-year period. In every case, cancer. The ones that weren't starved, no cancer. Then they looked at mice that had tumors, and they put tetanus spores in. And tetanus spores can only grow in low oxygen environment. They grew where the cancer was. They didn't grow where the oxygen was. So 2 experiments absolutely conclusively showed, but back then they didn't know these oils were the oxygenators. That's one of my big discoveries. The omega-6, and actually Campbell had it in '76, but he really didn't know how much he had. So I jokingly say to a lot of colleagues, if these people really understood what they had, we'd already have the solution. And they don't write enough about it. He had it in a paper, but that was the end of it, and nothing really happened with it, where I pound and pound and pound, this is it, and I write extensively on it. So I actually published the first printing of Hidden Story of Cancer. I didn't know Campbell. And I work with a biochemist, physical chemist, he's a PhD, of course, went to Oxford, and said, Brian, I don't see how cellular oxygen is tied to the omega-6. And I said, well, I really don't care if you can see it or not, it has to. The science I had was so strong, I actually published the thing. Then we found the paper by Campbell, and it went in the second edition with the reference. So that was the only time I've ever published something where I wasn't 150% absolutely sure of what the hell I'm saying. Because usually I go round and round and round. Is this absolutely right? I look at it from every possible angle, because if you're going to listen to me, your health is in my hands. If I'm wrong, I should be shot. I have no problem saying that. And that's the level you should hold doctors to and anybody else. There's nothing where you're different, you have too much stress, you're different, your eye color's wrong, your hair's a brown, it should be blue, and that's why it happened with her, not you. No, you're all the same machine. You can't live underneath in the dirt like a termite. You can't live in carbon monoxide running your car, shutting the door and breathing in it. You know, you've got to live in regular air with the oxygen. So we're much more alike than we are different. This everybody's different is the grayed out. So the medical profession's brilliant. Everybody's different. Well, so we don't know what happens. Cancer, there's hundreds of causes of cancer. That's what these idiots, and they aren't idiots, actually say. I live in Houston. We have the biggest cancer center in the world, MD Anderson. They don't know the name Otto Warburg. I went over there. They don't know who the hell he is. They don't know lack of oxygenation is the cause. And they're supposedly the best in the world. Why are they the best in the world? Well, because we say we are. And that's about it. A friend of mine went there. They killed him. Good job. Great job. Pitiful. Absolutely pitiful. So I don't think the medical profession is going to help you. Anybody that wants to go to a doctor, that was one of the questions we didn't have time on Jan's show. You want a doctor that's integrative complementary medicine. You want an MD or DO, but they like complementary or integrative. What that means is I don't care where the hell it comes from. I just want to help my patient. My dad had pneumonia. He fell and hurt his hip, and then he ended up getting pneumonia, and then he got sepsis, which sepsis is a systemic infection. Given that you're older, he's 87, and had problems with the pneumonia on top of it, he had about a 60-70% chance of dying. I didn't know how bad he was, so I told my mother I'm going up there, and of course they're not using any of this because familiarity breeds contempt. Even doctors, their family doesn't listen to them. They go to somebody on the street, you know, to get the advice. So nobody listens to you if they know you too much. So I said, I'm going up there. I went in, I saw him, and it was, whew, he is really bad. So I saw the doctor and said, look, this is what I do. I'm a specialist in this. I'll sign anything you want. He's taking these oils, and his case, a liquid Essiac. I said, give me 3 days. I'm going to turn this guy around. He goes, okay, I don't see anything here that's going to harm him, because that's the doctor's biggest fear of getting sued because something hurts you. He goes, I don't see anything here. He didn't know what EFAs were. Most doctors don't. It stands for essential fatty acid. I don't like the term because you get scared. Acid, it's like acid is going to burn me. It's not that kind of acid. It's the molecular structure. They call it an acid, but it has nothing to do with burning anything. It won't. Gave me the 3 days, couldn't believe it. So my father went home, recovered everything, and every time I call my parents now, we saw the doctor, and he said, make sure you don't stop taking those oils. So he was a good guy. He was in his probably 50, and all he gave a damn about was not losing a patient, which I respect. Some of them won't let you do anything. It's like, I don't know what this is, no. And I could see some of that, because I'd be scared too if I didn't know what it was, but this is essential. I don't care what your condition is, you need these oils. You don't have them, you're going to die. So all of your skin is these oils. Well, guess what happens when you don't have enough of them? You get skin cancer. Everybody out in the sun, they're all going nuts. Why does skin cancer keep rising? Everybody's taking sunscreen, they're staying out of the sun, they're covering up, and it keeps rising. The dermatologists don't have a clue. It's because we're getting the screwed up oils in the sun. Then I did a big analysis looking at the #1 fish oil consuming countries like Australia. And I correlated it to cancer conditions because they had to be right at the top. Skin cancer, prostate cancer, and there was a direct correlation. So this is, once again, I said, I've got to be able to predict that these guys are taking all these fish oil supplements, and the minute you put high temp on it, it goes rancid. It goes rancid at body temp. Now you get out in the sun and it's 110 like in Australia or somewhere. So you're cooking it even worse. You have to have cancer all over the place. And there was. So it's just cool to be able to do it. Because when you do theoretical stuff, you have to be able to predict. It's like this fish oil stuff stopping heart disease. How? What on earth is the metabolic pathway where you could stop it? There isn't one. It doesn't oxygenate. You could say there's extra more bonds in there. It should, but it doesn't. It doesn't disassociate in the cell membrane. That is the parent omega-6. There's even been articles on what is the role of omega-3. Wondering why do we even need it in the regular cells? You don't need much of it. Now, I like supplements that have it. They need a right ratio of 1:1 to 3:1. Your body's pretty good. It doesn't need to have it specifically. It can make do with wide ranges. But it needs at least 1 part parent omega-6 to 1 part parent omega-3 as a supplement, because you're still getting some good stuff when you eat food. Even in a steak, the steak tissue, remember I told you it's 6:1? We're eating a hunk of steak. A human is 6:1. The grass-fed beef is probably 2:1. Corn-fed beef will be flipped around. It could be 1:6. 1 part omega-6, 6 parts omega-3, backwards from what we need. That's like flax. Flax is backwards. 1 part omega-6, 3.5 parts omega-3. Anybody just taking flax oil is going to kill themselves. It is awful, awful, wrong ratio. So there's technical things you have to know. And your body makes the omega-3 derivatives, DHA, EPA, just fine. You need next to nothing of it. And your body, see, the problem, everybody thought you needed more. They assumed all of it gets converted to derivatives. So if I take the parent, goes through all these things, comes out the derivative. Well, let's be easy on the body and just give it the derivatives, the EPA, the DHA, any of that stuff. No. You need very little, and it's called rate limited, and nobody looked at how much is the body making. The answer was next to nothing. And they all thought it was supposed to be close to 100%, so they're saying 0.5%, 1/4%. Well, everybody's screwed up. Well, wait a minute, how can everybody be screwed up? We're all living, we're not living well, but you die if it was supposed to be close to 100, and it's, 100th of that. It's supposed to be 100%, and it's 1, or it's a half, and it's 1 in 200. So they don't ask intelligent questions. So one of my things is the intelligence of the answer is proportional to the intelligence of the question. Get used to asking anybody in the medical field or health field very pointed, specific questions, like how much DHA and EPA does my body use a day? Goes into the brain. How much? What's the number? And if they look at you like you're crazy, how can you tell a dosage if you don't know that number? Well, it's critical. That's not answering my question. Give me the damn number in milligrams. I mean, this is the way I talk to these people, and you can imagine how many people don't like me too well. But I'm not here to gain friends. I'm here to give you the scientific truth, and if I'm wrong, shoot me. That's my attitude. Show me anybody else in the world that'll make that comment. That's the last thing they want, because they're always wrong and they're always reversing. I've had nothing materially I've ever had to reverse in 20 years. I don't think there's anybody on the planet that can say that. One thing I got misled on with fruit, I didn't understand that it was a lot different than a normal carbohydrate. That was because of the medical textbooks misled me. But I know that now, so I hope you at least get PEO Solutions, copyright 2015. This year, it is state-of-the-art. If you're concerned about anything in health, diabetes, cancer, heart disease, anything, that's the book for you. If you're concerned more about weight loss, 24-hour diet. They're completely consistent, but they come in from very different areas. And if you're right, it doesn't matter where I start. Anywhere I start, it all has to be consistent. It's called internally consistent. So I'm an electrical engineer by training. I don't come from the medical field. If I came from the medical field, I'd be as worthless as most of them. I'd have preconceived notions. So I started out with, how can you guys be so stupid, quite honestly? What you're saying makes no sense. Cancer is genetic. Cancer is in all of us. If that was the case, cancer would overrun everything and we'd be dead as a species. And then you look at some experiments, and they did one in 1950. They grafted a cancer cell to a normal cell. The the cancerous shell should take over the normal cell, right? Well, guess what? Never did. So cancer's recessive, if you want to term it. So that that tells you the whole thing is kind of lunacy. And then the whole thing, now these oils will also, this is my latest thing with Professor Seyfried. Cancer is a short-term effect. It's your body protecting itself. If you stop the oxygenation of a tissue or an organ, you die. If I cut off the oxygen in your brain for half an hour, you're dead. So if it's decreased, the body has two choices. You're either going to lose that organ, in which case you may die, or let it live, but lose some intelligence, lose a lot of intelligence. And the way it runs on sugar. Instead of being intelligent in the mitochondria, the way you get energy, it runs as though it's a yeast running on fermentation, which is a very dumb way. Oxygen gives an organism intelligence. So by turning cancerous, it makes the tissue like a yeast. What does a yeast do? It's dumber than hell, and all it does is grow. That's the price you pay. Infinite duplication and growth is not the prime cause of cancer. They always say it is. That's an effect. Just like the genetic change is an effect, it's not the cause. If I take a blowtorch on your arm, I'm going to destroy your entire skin. The DNA is ruined. That's an effect of me putting that torch on your arm. That didn't cause the tissue to become deformed from the heat. So they got it backwards. It's the same thing with cancer. It's an effect, and this is why they keep losing. The only effects they ever get with anything is in very rare types of cancer. I don't know if you've noticed that, but whenever they have a big breakthrough, it's always on this rare form of cancer nobody ever gets. Now, that's good. I'm not complaining, but it's not big enough. Overall, they've made no progress at all, no matter what the hell you read. It's a bunch of hyped BS. So biotech companies are valued at a fortune. Now, the methods sound good, but like a cancer vaccine. Well, it's not a foreign invader. What are you vaccinating against? That term doesn't even make sense. Yeah, but it sounds good because you don't know. So it's insane. When I first saw that term years ago, it was, what do you mean vaccinating? You can't vaccinate against this. It's not a foreign invader. That's why it has nothing to do with the immune system. They keep going, immune system, immune system. It's your own body surviving because of low oxygen. So cancer is a short-term thing where the body can go, called aerobics. Anti-aerobics. Aerobics is with oxygen. This is with no oxygen, so it's called glycolysis. So that's the way a yeast works. And you lose its intelligence, but you don't die. So what cancer is hoping to do is get the oxygen back in, and everything is fine. So Warburg showed it's 8 to 12 years of the kind of deprivation that it takes us to have cancer develop. So you have a huge window to get this solved. So anybody coming here that's even on the older side, easy hope, you fix it, you're going to be fine. You've got time to fix it, and it doesn't take long. It takes about a year to get fully oxygenated, to have these oils go into all the tissue, but from day one, you're fixing it. And most people are on a downward curve, getting worse and worse, which means more and more oxygen deprivation and more screwed up intimal tissue, so a heart attack is coming too. But you stop going negative, and now you start in the upswing. And that's enough. Remember, 35% is how little you can have on the oxygen before cancer hits. And that's a lot. It's easy as heck to fix it. So about the only people that are going to get cancer if you start this today is somebody that's really far gone. You're probably at 40% negative, and even if you took it, you're still going to get it. But I get almost nobody anywhere in the world, either a heart attack or cancer, doing what the recommendations say based on science. And the only reason I'm even here is because of food processing. If the food processors didn't ruin the food, you wouldn't need me. But they won't stop. The government doesn't help. Pharmacy, they don't look at this. They have nobody specializing in lipids. They have blood lipids, which is cholesterol, triglycerides, that stuff, but I'm not talking that. I'm talking about physiologic lipids to solve the problems of disease. They don't have that. So the omega-6 side is critical. You need some of the omega-3 because your tissue uses it. So I'm very conservative. Then you need minerals because minerals are coenzymes. They work with the vitamins. So they make reactions go up to 1,000,000 times faster. And there's a lot of minerals that make your own antioxidants, like SOD, superoxide dismutase is a huge one. Glutathione is a huge one. Your body makes these from the minerals. Eating all this antioxidant food will do zero. It's utter BS. When I go into Whole Foods or something and I see it's an Orem rating or some rating, who here's seen that stuff? The antioxidant rating on, the miraculous blueberry and this next stupid thing. You always see on TV, palm, what the heck do they have? Pomegranate or something, it's this major they're insane. They had 1,000,000 acres to grow stuff, so they have to cook up something. They're great marketeers, brilliant. But if you think that's something special, you're delusional. And your body doesn't need it, it makes this stuff. So my thing is give the body what it wants and let nature do its job. We're designed very, very well. I'm amazed how well we work given the wrong fuel. See, when I started out 20 years ago, it was okay. Is the machine screwed up or is the fuel screwed up? There's two things. What's wrong, your car or the gasoline you put in the car? You put in the cheap crap in the Ferrari because you didn't want to spend the money, and the car runs like hell. You need high, super premium fuel. So if you didn't know that, you're looking at the engine, the spark plugs, the timing, everything. You never looked at the fuel. You'll waste a whole week and never get it. Maybe you'll never get it. I started with it's got to be in the fuel because all socioeconomic classes get cancer and heart disease. I don't care how wealthy you are, I don't care how smart you are. You still get it. So it had to cross all socioeconomic barriers. What's the only thing that could do it? Food. Then I started looking at cell structure. What is the most important thing in the food? And it was the oils. When I saw that, it was damn. And then I started really focusing on Warburg's work, and it was, my God, what could knock out 35% cellular oxygen transfer to the cell? These oils. When I saw Campbell's thing, it was, my God, why doesn't anybody have this? This is so easy. So what I do is I connect the dots. Again, I'm an engineer. I have to have cause-effect. I have to have accountability, and it has to be internally consistent, meaning anywhere I start, it's good. It works. Fish oil cannot help in heart disease, but it increases cancer because all the guys that take it have more prostate cancer. It can't do that. Nature isn't cruel like this. That's inconsistent. If it's good for one thing, it's good for everything, period. And these oils are. The next thing outside of the minerals, and there's 8 of them, and I care about the macro minerals, which means they're in the milligram levels. I don't care about this minerals from the sea that are in micrograms and 60 of them or whatever it is. There's 8 that aren't in the soil. Why? Because they don't use organic fertilizers. They use fertilizers that make the plant look fine, but they don't have what we need. And the typical way we get minerals is through animal sources. So it goes into the ground from the animal's waste. Nature's very good. It dumps out, goes into the plant. Animal eats the plant. We eat the animal. We can't digest cellulose. So if you think you're getting minerals from eating spinach, you're delusional. The whole thing with Popeye, no, we can't do it. This is why vegetarians, you see, are oftentimes very, very sick, because they're trying to do something we can't do. We can't digest cellulose. Cellulose is wood, by the way. That's fiber. So the next thing is, anybody telling you a high-fiber diet, they're giving you colon cancer. And actually, in 1999 and 2000, Lancet, which is the world's premier medical journal, and New England Journal of Medicine published, the highest fiber eaters in women got the most colon cancer. Now they're back to saying fiber all the time. You go, how the heck can the top medical journals publish the truth, and now they're reversed again? Fiber is cellulose. How do you think cellulose is on your delicate colon? Remember I told you, it's epithelial tissue. The whole lining is 1 cell thick. They warn you not to clean your eyeglasses with tissue, like paper tissue, Scotch tissue or any of them. They tell you don't do it. It'll scratch them. That's cellulose. And these jackasses are telling us to eat lots of fiber. They're causing colon cancer. I just look at this and, again, how stupid can you be? And the government just keeps flipping. All it is a merry-go-round. If you read my books, I have a merry-go-round. 20 years ago, we're back to where it is. High carbs are out, higher fats in, higher proteins in. Why was it ever out? It was right 20 years ago. All the physiology, everything I ever read, was very consistent. High carbs are awful. You just measure the blood chemistry. If you eat a pile of carbs, you're dead. Also, if you eat 20 teaspoons of sugar, you have no immune system for hours. Here's a number to remember. Every 5 grams or every 20 calories, carbohydrates, a teaspoon of sugar. We have 1 teaspoon of sugar in our system. Again, the number. What's the number? You don't know. You got to have somebody tell you. There's no way to deduce what that number is. When I first looked at this, because I'm an engineer, I don't want 5 millimoles per deciliter. That's the number. That's the number the doctor would give you, and I'd go, what's that mean? It's a teaspoon. So when I calculated this, and it's not a hard calculation, it was, wait a minute, we can't have a teaspoon of sugar in our system. It's got to be 100 teaspoons. So I did it again, got the teaspoon. It's actually less. It's 9/10 of a teaspoon. I gave it to some colleagues. Where did I make the mistake? They go, you didn't make any mistake. Look at the number of teaspoons of sugar the average American's eating today, 100. Where's it go? Fat. It's the insulin response. 1 teaspoon of sugar in the system. That's it. You're supposed to be running on your own body fat. And again, what the government do, high carb diet, 60% carbs, 2,000 calorie a day diet, 60%, 2,000, 1,200. 1,200 divided by 20 is what? 60. Our fine government said for you to be eating 60 teaspoons of sugar. Well, I have 1 in my system. If you're not exercising a heck of a lot, because you do burn it up if you exercise, hours and hours and hours a day, which nobody's going to do unless you're a professional athlete getting paid for it and that's your job, goes right to fat. Then that's where the exercise thing came up. Because I made you fat, you got to live in the gym. Well, I don't want to live in the gym, so I can't get fat. Okay. Then you go, okay, run. Then the government had this walking thing, 10,000 steps, that did nothing. So if you figure it out, if you run an hour a day on a high-carb diet, how many days does it take to lose 1 pound of fat? You're running an hour a day, high-carb diet, how many pounds of fat? Somebody said it, and you're right, because you read it. 40. Takes 40 days to lose a stinking pound of fat. So 40 times 9 is 360. There's 365. So wait a minute. Over a year, I'm going to run every day. You're not getting any time off, by the way. Every stinking day. I'm going to lose 9 pounds? No, you're not going to lose 9 pounds. That's 9 pounds of fat you lost, but you're so darn hungry from doing all that exercise, and you want a simple reward. You're going to eat more junk. You're going to gain 11 pounds. You're going to eat 11 pounds, which means you gain 2 pounds after a year running. This is why exercise, what they told you, doesn't. You burn glycogen first, which is stored carbohydrate. This is right in the textbook of medical physiology. And even doctor shows. I was watching TV once. My wife will watch this garbage. I can't stomach any of it. There's 2 guys, they're talking about this. Well, yeah, you run an hour and you burn 3,600 calories. That's a pound of body fat. And then they're figuring out how much fat you should lose by exercising. And it should be a huge amount, and it's not. And then they're looking at, well, if you eat extra calories, every 3,600 it's another pound, and the average American should be gaining 20 pounds a year. And the doctor's reading this off of a card. And you could see the expression on their face going, this is stupid. And they act like they don't understand it, but they had no idea of the science. It's pathetic. They should stay in their specialty. Oz is probably a very good cardiologist. He's gotten a lot of heat because he just endorses all this insanity, and I can't take it. The miracle thing, green coffee beans. Yeah, that's going to make you sick to your stomach. What is there? Where's the the question, where's the metabolic pathway? Doctor, what is the metabolic pathway that does this? And they're going to look at you with a glazed over look because they never get them. There aren't any. That's why the damn thing can't work. It's tragic. So back to what you need. You need the oils because they're not in the food. They're in the food, but they're ruined. The minerals aren't in the food because it's too expensive to have organic farming. Then a detoxifier minimizes the junk we're eating that we don't want. And that best one in the world is Essiac, and I recommend adding cat's claw to it. It's an herb. It's not anything to do with a cat. It's the best upper respiratory cleanser on the planet. So anybody that's a smoker, asthma, anything like that, the Essiac is turbocharged, and you can read all about it in both the books. So it's 2 parts what's not in the food, 1 part negating the garbage in the food. It's a blood purifier. So it kills a lot of the stuff that's in the bloodstream that shouldn't be there. Big problem you need a detoxifier for is when you start dieting, all the toxins are stored in your body fat. They come out. So when you're dieting, you should be running on your own body fat, and that's what you want. But all the stored toxin, and they're typically estrogenic. Most guys don't know this, but our sperm counts are down 50% from 1950 because all the growth hormones are estrogenic. You'd think they'd be testosterone, you'd think they'd be male, but they're not. They're estrogenic. So women are getting overdosed on estrogen because of what you're eating. It's not estrogen is killing you from your own body. I look at the OBGYNs and see what they write, and they're insane. You know, our body's not going to attack itself. Again, as a species, we'd be gone if that was the case. Then the other one is autoimmune disease. Well, there's a problem with that. It's not really what they think when the body isn't responding the way it should be. It's not that it's attacking itself just because it hates it. You know, you looked at it wrong or something. I mean, I just look at this stuff and the terminology is just crazy. So I look at pathways, not terms. But again, for all the science, and I'm very big on you understanding the science before you slug down supplements. I'm the antithesis of everybody on the planet. All they do is say, take this. I don't want you taking anything until you understand why you may need it. So the science I give is very, very complete. I'm the only one that gives actual quotes out of the medical textbooks. And it does get complicated, but I'll put in a box, you know, an analysis. But I want you seeing what they write. It's like these articles on fish oil. I gave you all quotes. Everything I said was direct quotes out of the articles. So the doctors are saying that it's worthless. They can't believe people are using it and that the sales are growing. And same thing with the journal articles, because most people that write this kind of stuff quote an article, and the article never said what they're saying. So I never do quotes of quotes. I always pull the article. It's an absolute bitch to go through all these things, but that's all I do all day long is read this stuff. Most articles should never even be written because they're garbage. Most aren't worth the paper they're printed on, or you should be able to deduce it in advance. So my joke is I used to go through about 600 of these things a week, and I don't do it anymore because it was so worthless. 2 were worthy of being published, if that. So publishing today has become an end in itself. This is the other problem. 20, 30 years ago, for the internet and everything, a paper would be very, very good. Now there's so many journals and so many everything. This is how a doctor, an academic in a university or a hospital gets rated. How many papers you publish? It better be 300. If it's not 300, that's no good. Who the hell publishes 300 papers? Well, you know, I teach, and every student, I'm putting my name on it because I'm his teacher. That's what they do, by the way. There's people that have thousands. I mean, wouldn't you be kind of embarrassed to say your name is on 1,000 papers? My first comment would be, and what'd you discover with these 1,000 papers? What's your big deduction and accomplishment? Typically, it's nothing. How do you do 1,000 papers that lead nowhere? Where did it lead? Nothing. I mean, the whole thing is just so convoluted, and it has nothing to do with how good it is. If you look at the old days like Einstein, probably 5 papers. Feynman, another Nobel Prize winner in physics, 5 or 6 papers. I mean, these guys were phenomenal geniuses. There's not 100 papers, there's not 200 papers, 1,000 papers, there's 5. Because they published stuff where it was really important stuff that was fundamental. Einstein's stuff was incredible. He had 2 big ones. I mean, today it's an end in itself publishing garbage. And they're always on to the next thing. They have no interest, because I send emails to these people on articles that I find interesting. None of them follow up, none of them. Be nice to get one, I'm talking 0. They don't even care about their own article they wrote, which to me is incredible. But please take a look at the books. Big following of MDs. Look in the beginning of it. These physicians and health professionals, none of them get a penny to write what they do. They all experience this with their patients. And you read some of this and go, I mean, there's nobody in the world that gets the results that we do with these oils. And it's all around the world. It's all different populations. And, you know, maybe take 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'll be happy to answer questions. And if I don't know the answer, I'll tell you. You really don't want my guess or what's your opinion. That's for art or politics. This is your life. You don't need somebody's opinion on your life. If you don't know the answer, you're obligated to say that. Or if you have a theory, Feynman said this, the Nobel Prize winner, you're obligated to say everything that isn't consistent with the theory or fails. Like these fish oil things, you will never ever hear most of the trials fail. They'll tell you we've done 15,000 of them. Well, how many are successful? 10. Why? My first question, why are you doing 15,000? That is the number, by the way. 15,000 fish oil studies. Why so many? You do one with gravity, it falls off the bridge. You do a second one, is it still falling? Yeah, we're done. 2. So, I mean, this is the way I look at stuff. Very, very different than a physician or something. But again, this is why they get nowhere. And this is why you're not going to end up with heart disease or cancer. And diabetes will be significantly helped. So I'm sure there's a lot of diabetics in the audience. Be happy to answer questions. 'Cause that's what got me into this field. My wife became diabetic in her 30s doing everything right, type 1. So I tried to prevent diabetes and bring back a pancreas. I failed. But there's nobody in the world that's been able to do it. I can get you on less insulin. That's the best I can do. And impede the diabetic neuropathy and retinopathy. So the eyes, you don't go blind, and the feet, you don't go like the ads where the pinprick things where you're going insane. So we can talk about that later or anything else you want. But take 15 minutes and go through some of those books if you're new to this, because the science is there. And even the doctors read it 2 to 3 times. So what I tell everybody is go through it from beginning to end. Don't worry if you can't understand everything. Just keep going because it reiterates some things. Then the second time you read it, you have a knowledge base. Right now, it's very hard. Everything you know about nutrition, unless you've been to this kind of stuff, is wrong. So I don't get to start with 0. I get to start with -20. Everything you know is wrong. Then you got to listen to this guy saying everything you know is wrong, and I have to hope you listen to some of what I'm saying. Very difficult. People don't like being wrong. So I look for physicians that go, and with PEO Solution, a top one that's written 4 books on integrative medicine, is an authority in this. I have a confession to make. That's how he started. Because he used to recommend fish oil until he came across my work. And that's a big guy. I have a confession to make. I was wrong. Very few doctors will say that. So that, to me, is a big deal when a physician, and Dr. Rowan, too, it's another colleague of mine, he's a vegetarian. So we did PEO Solution together. You've never seen a book by a vegetarian and a carnivore before. Usually they hate each other's guts. But we have the overlap of the oils. And even being a vegetarian, if you know what you're doing, you get the oils without a supplement, and they're not eating negative junk. He's a raw foods vegan, which applies to almost nobody in the room. So it's doable, but it's nearly impossible. But the point is, you'll see his perspective and you'll see mine, and you'll see where the overlap is. Very sharp guy, another one that knows biochemistry very well, and that's what you want, a physician that knows physiology and biochemistry. Most don't. It's really, really tragic. But take a look at that, and I want you to really understand the science. So 15 minutes, we can come back, maybe 25 past, and then be happy to answer every question I can. Thanks.